Good afternoon, and welcome to the Trading Services panel. On behalf of Trading Services team in CEFTA Secretariat, we are the so-called younger brother in CEFTA. We always come after trading goods, which always gives us a little bit of high standards, tall shoes to fit in. Because people are used to trading goods. They're used to thinking about goods when we talk about trade, because you can always picture a product going from one market to another. But what about service? Obviously, it cannot be put in the container so easily and shipped somewhere on the boat. However, we have similar problems trading goods and trading services because supplying service also in many instances require certain authorizations. Authorizations, they find different shapes and forms. They appear by different names, and we know them as licenses, qualifications, permits, certificates. The difference is that in our case is not the product which is being certificated, but it's the supplier. And supplier can be a person, supplier can be a company. However, the logic is the same, that if you operate within CEFTA, sometimes you need 7 certificates, 7 bureaucracies, 7 procedures in order to access these 20 million consumers that we gather under CEFTA framework. And therefore, our main topic today is how can we make this work in CEFTA to replace the 7 procedures, 7 documents, with 1, or at least less than 7, in order for our regional businesses to benefit from less procedures, less fees, less time wasted on bureaucracy. I will be talking about this from different perspectives with my distinguished guests from private and public sector, all engaged in some way in relation to services sectors and trading services. In alphabetical order, let me welcome them. Firstly, Admir Jaminovic, Executive Director of International Operations of Euroasphalt, DOO, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's coming from Sarajevo. Altogether, he has 35 years of experience, with last 10 years in his current position. Previously, he has held managerial positions in international companies from America, Emirates, and Bosnia. Agron Polumbi has joined us from Tirana. He's an engineer with long experience as an author and editor in textbook publishing houses. He has held the position of advisor to the Minister of Education and Culture, Director of Vocational Education and Training, and since 2016 in various leadership positions in the National Employment Agency. With us today here in Skopje is Jenan Omanovic from ENIC Center from Bosnia and Herzegovina, where he holds the position of the head of Department of Information and Cooperation. He's also the chair of the group of higher education reform experts from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and one of the key experts in national educational reforms, including implementation of EU directive on professional qualifications. Last, but certainly not the least, Susana Liesgara, who joined us from Thessaloniki. Susana is a lawyer, GIZ expert. Her expertise in the field of services, the freedom of establishment and the freedom of movement of services. Long experience on the implementation of the Services Directive and the establishment of point of single contacts in the EU member states and in CEFTA. Being an independent expert, supplying its services as a consultant in the region, not only she works on trading services, but she also lives it. So I wish to thank you all for joining me today, and let me open this discussion always with a business perspective, which shows actually why we are doing it. So I invite Admir. I invite Admir with us because he works in a construction company, and construction has always been referred to as export potential. Nevertheless, it is one of the sectors where we find a lot of bureaucracy, for example, in forms of licenses and permits. So Admir, can you share with us what are, in your experience, key barriers for exporting your services in the region?
Dear all, let me introduce a little bit just my company. Euroasphalt is an international company working in the region with roughly 1,500 employees and turnover roughly around 150 million euros. And working in the region, as we mentioned, in CEFTA parties or CEFTA region, Euroasphalt for beginning, even now, that has the biggest problems, like you even mentioned in your statement, with the working permits. This is the number one. And definitely with the certificates, what we kind of need for every single of region or every single of party, of CEFTA party, we have to provide. Even we are all civil engineers, we all have a degree, but in some other region doesn't work, or some other region we have to, again, replace with some, for instance, the same company or same governmental procedure to go through. What's going to take the time, at least say from 1 up to the 2-3 months. And secondly, problem with the certificates or in the CEFTA region, going from the transport, the goods or material from one side, from Bosnia or from wherever in the country, going to Slovenia or to Croatia, where we're working on the couple jobs. So they're going to take at least 7 days if they go through all, checking all certificates and checking all licenses. And if they have a CE or doesn't have a, or what kind of approval to be accepted from another side or from investor or the resident engineer. This is the problems, but we like a construction company working in some area, accepted, just move couple miles or couple kilometers in another side or another region or other country, we have a problems. We have to repeat all over everything from beginning, and takes the time, takes the effort, takes the money, and of course efficiency of our work kind of going down with all this, because we're losing the time for something what we have already done on our country.
Thank you very much, Admir. I think this portrays quite well what we will discuss about today. So we start the discussion from the business perspective, and we go on to the expert perspective, because Susanna is working with us in CEFTA with tourism experts from the region on a very first arrangement within CEFTA, which aims to make life easier to companies like Admir's, but only in tourism sector, who need licenses in order to operate in different CEFTA markets. So Susanna, can you please help us understand what exactly is that you hope to agree in CEFTA on this project?
Indeed, licensing requirements, in general, all authorization schemes in place constitute the main barrier for service suppliers. In the field of tourism, and especially for travel agencies and tour operators, aim of this draft decision is to remove unnecessary barriers as regard licenses, and especially restrictive requirements for the establishment of a tour operator or a travel agency in a CEFTA party. Another aspect of the draft decision is to facilitate trade within CEFTA parties, meaning when a service provider would like to supply services on a temporary basis from one party to the other, not to establish, just to go there for a week and supply services, meaning that in that case, after the adoption of the decision, there will be no need of registration or a license, but just, let's say, a notification procedure towards the administrative authorities of the host party.
Thank you, Susanna. So just to clear up one thing. So how did you come up to this list of measures to facilitate this kind of trade? Is this something which was invented by CEFTA, or it's taken over from somewhere else?
We are following closely the Services Directive, the European Services Directive, which is actually aim is to remove all restrictions in the establishment, to the freedom of establishment, to support this main main rule from the Treaty of the European Union, and also the free movement of services, meaning the temporary provision of services. So actually, the draft decision is based on the EU model, and all parties will be already one step in front when it comes to their job to implement the Services Directive, because sooner or later they will have to implement the Services Directive, which is extremely challenging for all CEFTA parties and candidate countries.
Okay, so just once more to wrap up, if I were, for example, a travel agency and I wanted to supply, to sell my packages in 4 markets in CEFTA, but in each one I need a license. So if this decision is adopted, what will change for me?
If you want just to go in a temporary basis for a month or a week, normally you will have to just send a notification with the specific information to protect consumers and the service suppliers and service suppliers and also the recipients of services. But in case you would like to establish, to have, let's say, another like a department of your company, there should be all requirements in place. For example, if one party requires a license, you should have a license, but all the requirements that you meet in your home party where you are already established, this should not be duplicated. So if you have already obtained a certificate in your home party, then you do not need again to obtain same certificate in the host party. This is the rule of non-duplication of requirements, which will avoid a lot of bureaucracy and will facilitate definitely the trade of provision of services.
Thank you, Susanna.
Specific to sector.
We had a little glitch with the connection, but I hope that you're still with us, and thank you very much. I think that the main message came across quite well here, that that's a concrete facilitation mechanism for the companies. But as I mentioned in my introduction, trading services is closely linked with people, with movement of people, and most services are supplied by people who need to travel and stay in other markets. CEFTA is currently working on enabling people who supply services to stay in other markets without work permit. One of the regional champions in this field is Albania, and this is why we invited Agron to share with us Albanian experience so far on removing obstacles related to work permits. Agron, please.
Atë mbejon së pari t'ju falenderoj për ftesën dhe që ndjehemi nderuar që jepet mundësia të ndaj me ju shkurtimisht informacion lidhur me punësimin e tuaj në Shqipëri, fokusuar në këndvështrimin e lehtësimit të lëvizjes së ditë të njerëzve, të bizneseve, punëtorëve e tjerë. Gjatë vitit 2021 u miratua ligji I ri për të huajt, I cili vlerësia e tij është në plotësimin me aktën ligjore, domethënë mbyllën gjithë miratimi I tij me aktën ligjore, qytetarët e huaj do të pajisen vetëm një leje unike, pra vetëm një dokument të vetëm, duke mjanuar, duke hequr pa dokumente tjera që deri më sot merreshin nga institucionet shqiptare. Pra në këtë mënyrë do të lehtësohet ndjeshëm dhe procedurat e pajisjes së dokumentave, pra me dokumente të shtetëve të huaj që kërkojnë të punojnë dhe të jetojnë në Shqipëri. Cilat janë disa nga rrezikët e lejes unike? Leja unike do të përmbajë në një dokument të vetëm 2 dokumente aktuale, që është leja punës dhe leja qëndrimit. Së dyti, qytetari huaj mund të aplikojë online nga vendi I tij I origjinës. Aplikimi si dhe pagesat do të mundësohen vetëm me një procedurë të vetme në portalin I Albania. Së katërti, dokumenta shoqëruese të lëshuar nga institucionet shqiptare nuk do të merren nga shtetësi huaj, por do të sigurohet nga përdorim I sistemeve informatik njëri me tjetrin, pra të sistemeve shtetërore informatik njëri me tjetrin. Leja unike do të kompletohet dhe me shenja biometrike, çfarë bën më këtë lloj dokument më të saktë dhe më korrekt. dhe autoriteti përgjegjës për marrjen e aplikimit dhe lëshimeve elektronike do të jetë Departamenti i Kufirit dhe Migracionit dhe gjithë procesi do të monitorohet dhe do të jetë në përgjegjësinë e Ministrisë së Brendshme. Cilat janë avantazhet e kësaj sjellje si ligji i ri të tuaj? Më të fokusuar duke leja unike. Do të shkurtohet shumë koha administrative që do të nevojitet deri më dje qytetarit për të pajisur me dokumentat dhe procedurat ndërkohë janë reduktuar. Pra ato procedura që deri më dje janë lehtësuar goxha. Janë përcaktuar saktë detyrimet e institucioneve në përputhje me të drejtat dhe ligjit themelore të parashikuara nga konventat ndërkombëtare që kanë shkuar vendi ynë. Ndërsa për punëtorët jashtë vendeve të CEFTA-ve, mirëtimi për leje për punësim do të jepet vetëm pasi aplikimi të brenda kuotave detore që mjafton Ministria e Ekonomisë dhe Financave në Shqipëri. Këto janë disa avantazhe që ka leja unike. Ne po punojmë si agjenci pra Agencia Kombëtare e Punësimit dhe Arsyeve, po punon për të besuar edhe aksesin në informacion të qytetarëve tuaj edhe punësimit, kushtet, kriteret e tjerë jashtë vendit, pra jashtë Shqipërisë. Dhe kështu mendojmë dhe po pilotojmë që në portalin e punësimit në Shqipëri të publikohen informacionet të strukturuara dhe të përkryera në Shqip nga portali i Migracionit të EU-s për 12 profile kryesore të punësimit për 27 vende të BE-s. Kjo është për sa i përket pikës parë.
Thank you very much, Agron. Just one additional little question. So basically, if I understood correctly, the entire procedure for this can be done online in Albania.
Pra një uaj mund të aplikoj online duke plotësuar kërkesën e titullit dhe duke shkarkuar të gjithë dokumentat dhe setin dokumentave që kërkojnë për një leje të caktuar pune ose leje unike.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a really great news from Albania, which I think that really facilitates the actual life of people in companies who need to travel and stay in other markets. So, but the relationship between people and services has another important aspect, which is called education. And when education and training is actually put as a requirement to supply a service, we call it professional qualification. This has been another important subject in the context of the common regional market. And Jenan Omanovic has been involved in 2 regional initiatives which are going hand in hand under the umbrella of common regional marketing, seeking to make recognition of professional qualifications easier and more effective. Jenan, once completed, how will professionals from the region benefit from this work?
Actually, I would like to highlight firstly that recognition of professional qualification is a really demanding process, even in the EU country, which already more than 10 years adopted law on regulated profession. There are 2 initiatives in the region. One of them is led by the RCC and is related to recognition of 2 professional qualifications which are already stipulated by the European directive concerning recognition of professional qualification for practicing regulated profession. These professions are doctor of medicine, dentist, and architect. And because these 3 professions are already stipulated by directive, higher education institutions in the region, I think, already harmonized their study program with the provision requirements actually from the directive in the way that they fulfill all requirements concerning duration of the study program, theoretical part of the study program, practical part of the study program, everything what is stipulated by the directive. And I think that this RCCR agreement will not have so many problems in the implementation of this agreement in the all economies. But CEFTA agreement related to recognition of general system of recognition of professional qualification concerning practicing regulated profession is really demanding, because all sector, I think, in every economy should be included in this, because and I think more than 50, even 100 different laws should be analyzed and realize what are the regulated profession and how to have the same approach related to recognition. What I also would like to highlight is the main problem now in Bosnia and Herzegovina concerning the profession of architect and civil engineers. For example, recognition of such qualification is divided into two phases. In the first phase, we are recognize qualification concerning an access to non-regulated labor market. This means that you as the civil engineer can work in the public sector, can work in hospitals, I don't know, in public companies, but you cannot work as a civil engineer in order to sign the project, in order to work in highway construction or something like that. This means that after this first recognition procedure, which lasts from 1 to 2 months, you need additional recognition in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The recognized body is the Ministry of Special Planning, and the same in the Republic of Srpska, Ministry of Special Planning, Construction and Ecology. And this procedure also lasts, I think, months or two. And this means that in order to finish everything, I think at least 4 months are needed. And I think it is not acceptable, taking into account that construction season is from, I think, March, April to November, December, and you need almost all season in order to recognize your qualification. I think that this CEFTA agreement is very important for Bosnia and Herzegovina, for all economies in the region, because it is facilitate recognition procedure, it is speed up recognition procedure, and I think even remove all obstacles in the recognition procedure we now encounter. So what I also would like to highlight that based on our experience, any reform is not possible within the Bosnia and Herzegovina. I really don't know why, but we really need international support and international funds in order to implement this.
Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you for making the link between a huge work, I think, that needs to be done on the administrative side. So it's not just a will, it's really the work which needs to be invested. But on the other side, there are benefits for companies, for real companies such as Admir's.
Yes, Admir cannot wait 4 months in order to hire a civil engineer from the region. Yes. This is not acceptable at all for the labor market.
Yes. So we guess that once these agreements are in place, that we will cut down significantly this time for recognition. Yes. Thank you very much, Jenna. So with this, we went through the first round of questions where we actually tried to lay down what is it on the menu, or at least what has been done in this in course of this year under the umbrella of CEFTA, and what the chairmanship of North Macedonia actually brought to us. Then before I go into the next round, I wanted also to mention to all of you here, as well as to our participants online, that if you have any questions, you can please write them in the chat, or at the end we will also ask the participants in the room if they have the questions, and they can raise hands. So please don't be shy. I hope that we will have some time at the end, at least for a quick round of questions. So the second round of questions is about future, as I said. It's about what lies beyond 2021. So I first invite Susanna to tell me her version of the future. So what kind of future work on licenses she sees in CEFTA? What can we see there after the implementation of this joint committee decision on travel agencies and tour operators? Is that a model that we want to follow for other services?
In a point, we will have to anyway. It will be obligatory, since, as I mentioned before, the party should implement the services directive. But we have to take into account that it's not an easy job. It is extremely demanding for the parties to implement this decision, because maybe it's the first time that something similar is taking place in the field of services. And I have to stress down that it was not just a coincidence, the choice of these two specific services, because the draft decision, it only concerns the travel agencies and tour operators. It does not concern architects or doctors, because there we have another regulatory framework. So this is because the provision of services from these two activities does not, let's say, has nothing to do with public health, many problems which other services could create. So, of course, parties should amend their law on tourism, which is, let's say, the primary legislation, but also amendments should take place in bylaws. Some parties, they do have a very complicated system. Others are already in line with the Services Directive, and this will bring them one step forward. But definitely, this will bring change, both for service providers and both for recipients of services. Because the draft decision does not only facilitate the trade in the field of these two specific services, but also brings more protection for the recipients of the services.
Thank you, Susanna. I'm actually reading at our comments, and I find a question which I think in a comment which is well placed with you. It says that CEFTA parties tourism markets are rather small for all tourism products and organized groups, particularly, but not only from a long-distance market such as China, Russia, Turkey, and EU. It is crucial to enable free movement of these groups and their providers, tour operators, to achieve the economy of scales. Do you agree that this is a much greater chance than a threat to existing positions of tour operators in the region?
I definitely agree, of course, because threat will be anyway. I mean, if you choose to, for example, some maybe parties will think that this will be more dangerous for recipients of services, because in some cases, but not only in the CEFTA parties, but everywhere, this is a worldwide phenomenon that some travel agencies are being bankrupt, and some deposits are not refunded, etc. Okay, problems will always be there, but the draft decision will not only facilitate and make it easier for small providers in the region, it will be much safer, because then it will be a little, let's say, a little bit of test or check, or they will have to send a notification to go to provide services from the one party to the other. Now, maybe they do it illegally. So if it's easier for them, for a small group of tourists coming from a travel package from a travel agency, then it's much safer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susanna. We are now
You're
turning
welcome.
to, again, the issue of movement of people, and I called Agron also to share how he sees the steps in facilitating movement of people, especially in the region. And I will also take opportunity to read one comment from the chat here. It says, regarding regulation in Albania, to provide services which implies the movement of people, the service provider does not have to stay for more than 6 months, which is necessary to get a residence. If the residence is a requirement to provide a service, then this is not enough. Plus, as you are talking now, the qualification recognition is a big obstacle. So that's a comment we received, so maybe also, Agron, you can refer to it a little bit in your speech.
Okej, atë më duhet të sqaroj edhe një herë, nëse informacioni që unë ndava me ju, domethënë ta bën fjalë për lehtësimin e procedurave të punësimit të shtetësve të huaj në Shqipëri, dhe nuk lidhet me elementet e tjera. Pra në këtë këndvështrimi unë ju pozova pa këtë lloj informacioni se çfarë bën në Shqipëri dhe cilat janë po themi objektivat ose cilat janë kërkesat tona për ta përmirësuar këtë lloj në bashkëpunimi, domethënë të kemi një tret përbashkët pune, të kemi kriteret e njëjta, të kemi diplomat e njëjta etj. Faleminderit.
Okay, so let me see if I understood correctly, or my translation is the situation with the people from the Western Balkans is Albania is that they do not need a work permit to provide the service. Do they have a special status in the context of Albanian legislation?
Atëre, në lidhje me të ardhmen, ne mendojmë që është e nevojshme të intensifikohen shkëmbimet e informacionit lidhur me vendet e lira të punës në shtetet që përfshihen në CEFTA, kushtet e punës, kontraktet e punës, kriteret dhe tjerë. Së dyti, të rritet bashkëpunimi për njohjen dhe unifikimin e standardeve të punësimit. Së tretë, të sigurohet një sistem unik dhe i njësuar i aftësive, i kompetencave dhe i kualifikimeve sipas sistemit ESCO, të unifikohen procedurat që ndiqen për punësimin e qytetarëve të huaj në shtetet respektive, të organizohen tërheqësa të përbashkëta pune, ku të shqetësohen prognoza mbi nevojat që do të ketë tregu i punës, të kualifikimet e reja, profilet dhe profesionet që do të kërkojnë zhvillimet ekonomike të bizneseve të tjerë në secilin nga vendi, në mënyrë që ne të jemi atraktiv, të jemi domethënë mobilën në lidhje me plotësimin e vendeve të lirave, por dhe për të paraprijë zhvillimit ekonomik me kualifikime në profesionet e reja, të garantohet një reciprocitet i veprimeve të ndërmarra nga palët që janë të interesuara për bashkëpunim të njësirë, dhe të atohen marrëveshje të përbashkëta bilaterale që lehtësojnë në punësimin sezonal dhe ata ndërkombëtar të shteteve të huaj dhe të dy vendeve. Faleminderit.
Okay, thank you very much, Agron. So we continue with the topic, which are obviously very connected, and this is the education and the labor migration. So, Jenan, you mentioned that CEFTA is working on establishing a general system, but this system, for the beginning, is to be applied on civil engineers.
Yes.
However, the future is about it's about including more sectors. Is it about new rules? Is it about making a connection with the EU? How do you see it?
No, these are no new rules. I think that we should harmonize our legislation in all economies completely in accordance with the EU directive. And I think that even countries which already adopted the law on regulated profession have problems in implementation of this law. So I think that for the future, the most important thing for Bosnia and Herzegovina is firstly to adopt the law on regulated profession, and after that to implement this law. In Bosnia and Herzegovina also there is so many laws which has been adopted, but we struggle when we come to implementation of this law. And I think that what is also important, that the law on regulated profession is demanding for accession of every economy to the EU, because Chapter 3 included one of the item of the Chapter 3 of negotiation will be to adoption of the law on regulated profession. Unfortunately, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we still don't have even the list of regulated profession, and our first mission is to establish the list of regulated profession, and we decided not to go in this process alone, then to apply for international funds and hire international experts in order together with them to establish firstly the list on regulated profession. After that, we should decide whether we will have a horizontal or vertical approach. If we decide horizontal approach, this means that we will have just one law on regulated profession, but we also can decide to have vertical approach, to have several law on regulated profession in different sectors. And it is up to us, especially because the Bosnia and Herzegovina is a complex country, and I'm afraid of the fact that some of competent authority will decide to have horizontal on some of them vertical approach, and I think that we should have the consensus about that. We still don't have in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what is also important is based on the EU country and their experience in implementation on the laws on the regulated profession is not to over-regulate this sector, because you cannot, if something is related to public health, safety, consumer protection, of course that you should regulate this. But please don't regulate everything what you consider that should be regulated, because in the EU country nowadays they try to deregulate some of the profession. Of course that civil engineer or architect should be very important and that they should be regulated. But teacher profession also. But there are so many other professions which shouldn't be protected, regulated in the way that you need additional requirements in order to work in other economies. What is also important is that this should be even the streamline for all economies which even adopted the law on regulated profession, that they try to deregulate this. And even the most important thing in order to speed up the process is to skip the first phase, to skip the recognition of professional qualification for access to non-regulated labor market, because you don't need this if you would like to provide a profession. I think this will be very helpful for all of us. We should agree between economies that I'm not familiar that every of economy do that. I think that two phases are in all economies, and I think that we should skip this first phase.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen. It's interesting that you mentioned actually that the work on implementation, so when we start implementing this, for example, this CEFTA decision, that the authorities in Bosnia who will actually do the recognition will have the chance to apply EU rules even before they get into the EU.
Yes. I think, for example, Croatia couldn't open additional chapters before closing the third chapter related to regulated profession, and they even waited, I think, several months because one of the 7 professions stipulated by the directive, midwife, was not in accordance with the provision of the directive, and they couldn't open additional chapter without that. So I think it is important if every of economy would like to be part of EU, to have this law on regulated profession and even to implement this law in accordance with the provision of the directive, not in accordance with domestic legislation.
Thank you very much. It's very good to hear actually that with with one stone, let's say, you can get more targets. Okay, so we heard the regulative and expert perspective on what is that is being cooked in the CEFTA kitchen this year, and what is exactly that we plan in 2022 and beyond. So now I call again Admir, who opened this discussion, to tell us how he sees this discussion, how he sees this, and what is his view on the future. What is it that you would like to see by 2024 when the common regional market should be established?
Let me put it this way. Can you imagine for us to be able to go from one country to the other country with one piece of paper? Like, for instance, they go from Croatia going to Slovenia, the one labor, like Jenna mentioned, of the labor market, only with A1 form from the Croatia, he goes to the Slovenia in same day. For us in construction, having this kind of opportunity, that will be great. Even with the labor market, beside material, and you don't have to wait now. Sending some material from Albania going to the Slovenia or to Croatia or to Bosnia doesn't have to go through all these countries, all these customs and certificates, checking up and everything. Just on the first one, the last one, they're going to be released. Biggest achievement and speed up in any kind of production of work. I hope there's going to go a little bit more than us just having a discussion every single time, because this is so many we have discussions about to try to achieve this kind of unified certification, unified working permits, or I know there is a rules checking up for instance, for the all procedure, how you're going to get the labor work. But if there's one country already checked up, doesn't have to go through all this in the another one. So for us to go one step more to even CEFTA having a little bit more push up in the European community, including our region, which is not a member of the European Union, except the people who they're in the European Union. So this will be great achievement, and definitely big help for everyone in the sector, in everyone in every segment, even the tourism, in the construction, even in the education, and you name it, in each of them.
Thank you very much. So I calculated that 2024 we should have around this time a conference that will take place, I think, in Belgrade or somewhere in Serbia, who will hold the chairmanship, and then we will try to remember to invite you so that we can have this discussion again to see what exactly is that we
and to
have.
Finish it.
Yes. In the meantime, we do our best. Yes, you heard also, Jenan, that this is a lot of work. It's not really just a matter of paper. It's actually how we put this into practice and educate, if you will, all these people who are working in different administrations and institutions to apply these rules. But yes, this, as you pictured out, I think that our vision and definitely the ultimate objective is to have what our neighbors in the EU have.
Yeah, free movement, between that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Admir. So we have completed the second round of questions. I see that we have been quite efficient. So I give you an opportunity once again to ask questions, additional ones, have comments, invite any of my participants, my panelists, sorry, to comment anything you would like. This applies both to you in the room, but also to our colleagues online. And while I think you're cooking about it, you're thinking about it, sorry, obviously I'm hungry and I see that I have a message that I should announce the lunch after. So that's a Freudian slip. I will just ask Susanna so that to perhaps elaborate more, to use this time to elaborate more on the possibilities to expand this. So we are working now on travel agencies and tour guides, and we will adopt the decision, hopefully implement the rules and so on. But you heard Susanna, the Admir. Is this something that is this a model that we can apply to construction? Is this a model that and how will that work? And how does that actually? What is the experience of the European Union, where the Services Directive made impact and created benefits for the companies in the region, for the companies in Europe, sorry, in this case?
I think Admir is totally right. This, if all this take place and they will be implemented, business will be their life will be much easier. Okay, let me now reply to your question. Because Services Directive is extremely wide, so it covers all services. Some of them are excluded from its scope. For example, transport services. We are not dealing with air travel or telecommunications or health services are excluded. But all others, and we mean hundreds of services, are under the scope. What this means? That for construction specifically, there are hundreds of small activities like services and sub-activities which are affected. And if in the future the region will decide to have something similar also for other sectors than tourism, this will affect you directly. I will take a small example. Let's say I will take a craftsman activity like plumber or painting activities. So if somebody would like to move, like temporarily for a week to provide services, or a group of people, of plumbers or construction people that they work in a building, or they would like to move to the coast in Montenegro to support activities for a big hotel, then you just need to notify Montenegro that you go there. Nothing else. This is how it should work. And the concept of the Services Directive and again, for the draft decision and this mutual recognition of requirements is to make it easier to help business suppliers. So the concept is that on the way you move from Podgorica to Budva, the same way you should move from Tirana to Budva, without applying more requirements, more certificates, more burdensome and restrictive requirements. But this without leaving outside protection. I heard that it was totally right that you should not regulate more the professions. There are regulated professions by the Professional Qualification Directive. There are 7. And there is a reason that there are not 7 and they are not 100. So this is because you do not need to regulate more. You need to find smart ways to protect consumers and service suppliers. And this cannot happen with more restrictive requirements, more documents, translation of documents, translation of certificates. This is burdensome. And I'm sure that all instruments of CEFTA, for example, the contact point for services, all these platforms, the online platforms, will help.
Thank you very much, Susanna. So the point I think that I try to get from you is that the work on travel agencies is not only the work on travel agencies, but it's actually a model that can be replicated in many other services where this facilitation can take place. Okay, so one more question.
Definitely.
One more question, a little one for Jenan. We were talking about this general system of recognition of professional qualification, which has, I think, the same potential to be replicated to other professions. But just if you can perhaps elaborate a little bit more on this other system, on the automatic one, which requires which is based on the previously defined requirements. In other words, it's called automatic, but how automatic is it really? Is it really?
Actually, I don't agree that automatic recognition in the way how someone means to realize that is possible, because taking into account that really strong development of IT technologies, we have now so many fake qualifications, and some kind of procedure should exist. You shouldn't leave everyone to work if you don't have some kind of procedures. But if we, for example, we are recognizing qualification based on the Lisbon Recognition Convention concerning access to the non-regulated labor market. I think that if we jointly agree about joint standard how to recognize and how speed up and facilitate this process, we will have automatic recognition, in my opinion. Because even if you have just one fake qualification, consequences of this fake qualification can be really bad for all society. For example, we have had in Bosnia and Herzegovina the PhD qualification, fake PhD qualification, and this professor worked for several years in the higher education institution. Could you imagine how many consequences we have? Should we abandon all qualification issued by higher education institution, or what to do with all qualification that we have professor who... I think that procedure should exist, and we should speed up and facilitate this procedure, and I think this is, in my opinion, automatic recognition.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for underlying, I think, the same conclusion which our colleagues in the trading goods had, that the recognition arrangements and the recognition processes is about facilitating really movement of services and people on one side, but on the other side is also thinking about safety of the people who are consumers of these services. So I will just ask, check the messages once again, and I will ask Agron if he has anything to add before we close this panel.
Jo I falenderit. Unë munda pak në ato pak minuta të jap një prezantim të shkurtër lidhur me ato hapa që ne kemi ndjekur në lidhje për të ndihmuar dhe përgjegjësuar procedurat e punësimit të tuajve në Shqipëri. Ju falenderoj dhe ishte kënaqësi që ju komunikuam së bashku.
Thank you for coming with us. So before I close, just one more comment. I think this is for Susanna. Will the tourist from well-regulated markets stay protected if he or she buys travel package from tour operator from another CEFTA party, which perhaps has less elaborated regulation?
Yes. Yes, of course. The draft decision is not, let's say, focusing that much on that issues because it's also consumer protection behind this, rules about consumer protection. But there are, in the third title of the draft decision, there are rules which are common or similar with the Services Directive, which gives more protection for the recipients of services. Meaning that, yes, in the less regulated environment, but this only concerns the license of the business, this will still be protected.
Thank you, Susanna. And if I may add, will this consumer be somehow informed that he or she is buying a service from a supplier which comes from other markets?
Yes, this is an obligation of the service provider to give all information. It is quite, I think it's more than detailed in the joint draft decision, the draft, what information should be shared with the recipient of the service. And I think that this protection is much bigger than from already existing regulations in the parties, in the CEFTA parties.
Thank you very much, Tana. Thank you all panelists, and thank
Welcome.
you everybody who followed us in the room and online. You heard this discussion, and I think it well reflected what concerns these recognition arrangements in services sectors. It concerns the administration, the knowledge, the legislation that they produce on one side. On the other side, the people who use it, the consumers, recipients, who should be protected and who should be aware of who is their supplier. And on the other side, it is also about the people and companies, our businesses who are supplying the service, who are paying the tax, and who are creating the wealth in our economies. So bringing this triangle together with the view of using the European rules and transferring them and adapting them to CEFTA context is something that 2021 was definitely marked when it comes to trading services. And I'm sure that in 2022 we will continue working this, and we hope that we come with let's say, more tangible results which will produce the benefits that Admir was talking about. Thank you once again, and then I invite you now to go for lunch, which is on the 5th floor. The colleagues here in Skopje, I'm afraid that the lunch break without this extra benefit is for the online participants. And after that, I'm looking forward to see you all here on the panel on the intellectual property rights, which also bears importance in trading services, but in trading goods as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.